Hello, welcome back to This Is My Story, your unofficial Hearts podcast. This is something a wee bit different for us. As you will have seen on social media, we have spent the last couple of days interviewing the potential candidates for the Foundation of Hearts, which has been superb. This is a wee mini series with the interviews with all five of them. We have to say straight away that thanks to all five for taking part. It was amazing to get the time to talk to them. Every single one of them impressed us. It was myself and Ando that got the time to sit down and talk to them, and each person brings something unique to the table, has great ideas and great visions for where they want the club to go and how they want the Foundation of Hearts to work. The reason that we reached out to them to do them is because obviously we're Hearts fans, and you know what we're like on the podcast. We're heavily opinionated, and the whole point being fan owned is that we have this vehicle, we have this opportunity where we can vote on and off the candidates that we want, that we think best represent us, best represent the way we want the club to go. And that's why we thought, right, well, we're all big enough to stand outside Tynecastle with our bed sheets telling people we want them off the board. Then we need to, for that big enough to do that, then we need to get involved in the voting process and make sure that the right candidates are put forward. So the AGM for the Foundation of Hearts is on the 16th of December. The Foundation of Hearts messaged all pledgers to tell them of the process, and as of the 12th of October, I think it was, or round about then, basically all of the candidates had to submit their applications to be considered, and the five candidates that went through, that were successful and that go through to the vote, are Andrew Brown, Jerry Mallon, Brian Muir, Graham Robertson and Louise Strutt. Louise Strutt is an existing director and is standing for re-election. So again, you can go onto the Foundation of Hearts website and have a look at, I think they've got individual profiles of basically a little bit about them. You'll have seen bits here and there over social media as to what they're all about. But yeah, if you've got the time, dive on, have a read, see which candidate you like, and then listen and hear what they have to say in this wee mini series. And when you want to vote, and when the voting's open, you would just go to the foundationofhearts.org/election-address-2021. So in no particular order, here are your interviews. Cheers. Hi Brian, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Graham. Good.
Good. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk to us. Obviously, we'll go a bit about yourself, introduce yourself, talk us about, you know, what you've been up to, your Hearts journey so far, in terms of, you know, what you're up to in the Hearts scope, you know, season ticket holder, travel to games, all the stuff that makes you a proper Hearts man, all the stuff that matters in it. We'll talk about the Foundation of Hearts, your role and how you see in it, how we think we can get it to be better, or how we can make it, strengthen it and all that sort of stuff. The future of the Foundation of Hearts, where do you see it? And then why not talk about Hearts? That's the whole point anyway, isn't it? We're flying, Champions League money's coming in, you get on the Foundation of Hearts board, you're going to have £60 million to spend. Brilliant, isn't it?
That'd be great.
So as I said, Brian, if you take a wee brief few minutes or whatever, introduce yourself, talk us through yourself, your background, all that sort of stuff.
Sure. I mean, it's interesting in terms of Hearts. When I was actually brought up in Leith, I grew up in Leith, and in fact, my father was on Hibs books for a couple of years. But we're all mad jambos, right going back, even when Hearts were formed. I think actually one of my relations was kicking about the Meadows when they used to play the initial games there, and he worked at the local hospital and so on. So right from then, there's been connections with the club. So for me, I mean, I think I went my first game about 63. I'm 63 now, so yeah, it was against Motherwell. I remember that was 5. I can't remember the score. Maybe we should get in touch with the London Hearts and find out what the score was.
I was going to say, is that going to be an omen for tomorrow?
We won. I hope we won. Maybe that's through maroon-coloured glasses. But I think we did. And I always remember then as well, and I was telling someone this other day, that my big hero was, well before you guys, a guy called Davy Holt. Well, you actually saw him got his Scottish cap the other day. My absolute hero was Davy Holt, fullback. Wee stocky wee guy, and he was great. And he once volleyed the ball out of the pitch right in my pus and not be flying. I sat in the couch chair on the wall, which the kids did in those days. Fortunately, some guys caught me, but I still had the kind of T stitching on my face when I got home, and the marks from it. And I remember years and years later, I was up in the police, and I'm going to come to that in a second. I was in the police, and I was what they call ground commander, so you're senior officer next to the tunnel and so on. It was a half-time draw, and it was Alan Anderson and Davy Holt.
Right.
And I told Alan Anderson that story. He was a great big guy as well, and he said, "Davy, come here, Davy." So I told him the story. Davy, you done it all right. So I'm looking at your push uniform. You're fine, you know. I'm fine. This was a long time ago, Davy, but it was great, you know. So obviously, you know, just I loved going to the ground. I loved watching Hearts. It was always in my blood. I loved the nighttime games, like when you see Scotland. I loved the European games. Locomotive Leipzig game in 1976. I was working in the Stand Life, and a bunch of us were outside the diggers for the 5 o'clock opening, hammered it at the diggers. Couldn't believe the result. I thought I was drunk watching the result, you know. 5-1. Great result that for Hearts, actually, in a number of ways, isn't it? Yeah. And then got to another bar afterwards and got home absolutely smashed. I was only 18 at the time. So I saw Hearts quite a few times. I must confess, just to go and watch Hibs occasionally, some of the European stuff, because in those days you did do that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an affiliation. My dad formed a team called Muirhouse Violet, which I played for a bit myself. And they used to get old Hibs strips. He still had some connections, which faded away eventually. But yeah, I played myself. It was a Hutchie Vale as a goalie, but I was a bit small for a goalie, and eventually became a fullback. Probably my affinity with fullbacks over the years. I don't like the glamour. I'm more the kind of, you know, the shall not pass mentality, you know. And used to go and watch Hearts. I had season tickets all through my life. And I used to go away with Centurion and Christoffen, had some mates there. And then sometimes as well, the Tronent bus would always stop in the London Road. And if you were wanting to go to the game, you got on in the London Road and got on it and went to the game, you know. So many times, I remember when Hearts got relegated the first time going to Arbroath and, you know, godforsaken parts of the country, you know, wind blowing off the sea. But you wanted to be there to support your team. And I've seen some great Hearts teams and some not so great Hearts teams over the years at my age, you know. There was always that passion. And I think I was very upset, not professionally, but when all the stuff happened during the Chris Robinson era and the Vladimir Romanov era, and I was actually the local police commander for much of that time and was often the match or ground commander. And you probably know there was some quite naughty stuff going on in and around that, particularly the Robinson era. It was quite, and I had to deal with some of that. And I remember thinking, this is terrible. Hearts are going to at least move to perhaps Motherwell or even die. I couldn't believe Hearts would die as a club, but you think you felt quite impotent. What could you do about that? And then when the foundation came along, I thought, what, this is if this takes off, this is a great thing, you know. And pretty soon after it formed, I became a pledger. And at first, I just kind of, that was that. I pledged, did my bit. Now, my son was actually helping out the marketing side of Foundation. He's a digital marketer. He said, come on, join the group. And I said, well, I'm an ex-cop. I've not got those kind of skills. But he said, yeah, but you've got football knowledge. And so, but by this time, in fact, I was in charge of safety and security at Hampden Park. I did that for 10 years when I retired from the police. So I was in the control room. I worked at the 5-1 game. I was in the control room. I was at the 4-0 game. I actually worked, but I was still in the police then. So I had a strong, and I ended up heading up Hampden Park Limited, who worked under the Scottish FA. As the company started to get smaller and smaller, I became the head of the company. It's now totally subsumed into the Scottish FA. So I had a strong football background, a strong passion for Hearts. And I found myself really enjoying working with the marketing side and the foundation, and working on a few projects, you know yourself, Heart and Soul Days, Hearts Days, the video, and our project we're working on just now, a community-based project. We're looking at having a kind of a Maroon Mile type project. So that really fired up my enthusiasm. And in fact, I applied 3 years ago because I really thought I could bring something to the board. I could bring, yeah, of course, a passion for the club, you'd expect that, but also a really good understanding of management, of football, of working with fans, as I do a lot in the police and especially at Hampden. Didn't get on 3 years ago because I didn't get enough votes, but because largely Lee Strutt and Gary Halliday were seeking re-election. It's very hard to beat someone who's an incumbent. I've no issue with that. They've proven themselves, and Gary in particular is like phenomenal. If you know Gary's incredible man, incredible Hearts personality. But it gave me the bug for it. So I'm not just applying this time because, you know, Hearts are the major shareholder, the foundation, the major shareholders in Hearts, even though they are, and that is a factor. But I do believe we can bring something to the table. And I suppose the issues we had last season, the Brora Rangers game, I hate to mention it again, but I'm going to. You saw, in my view, and I'm sure we all did, a real disconnect opened up between ordinary fans, the foundation, and the club. They were calling for unbudge's head. They were calling for the foundation to do more, without realising that the way the foundation is structured, they're actually quite limited in what they can and can't do. And I thought, well, all that's true, but clearly there's a disconnect. Clearly there's been more communication, a greater crossover, and there's quite a few factions in amongst Hearts now. I'm not being critical of that. With the big Hearts, phenomenal community groups, the historical side, the marketing side. I do think we could and should be more joined up, particularly now to have the majority of the shares. And it's a fantastic opportunity to take the club forward. And you've seen with the latest financial announcements how the money donated by the foundation, and of course by phenomenal benefactors, is keeping us, in the black. I mean, that turnover for the money coming in is ridiculously good. And those that call for Anne Budge's head, or have done, need to take a wee step back and think to themselves, who else could have done any better in that area? And I'm no financial whiz kid, but you're thinking, it really is that not a really good thing that we're doing just now?
But then again, so one of my big things about the foundation has always been, it's always going to be reactive and emotive to what happens on the park, which is why I think that disconnect became more of a chasm last season, where, like you said, the start of the season we were all united as a fan base because we'd been demoted and we'd been hard done by. And then, Hearts fans, we call it arrogance or whatever, but we all expect to win that league. And to be honest,
it's not arrogance, it's absolutely.
And it's, and we've said it before, and it's something that I really like when I hear Joe Savage talk as well, is the weight of the football club shouldn't hold the club down. We're a massive football club.
Yeah.
That should be the first responsibility of anybody, whether it be the owner, the foundation, the players, the managers that come into the football club. They have to accept that burden, that this isn't, with all respect, a Motherwell or a Dundee United. We are Heart of Midlothian Football Club. We're one of the biggest football clubs in Britain, and that weight has to be taken into consideration. And I felt that at points last year, COVID, performances on the park, some of the sound bites where I think, and I'm hoping that the new guys that come into the foundation can make it better, is the communication side of it. And I think you're right there. It can become quite factions with, you've got your Federationist Hearts fans, you have the Foundation of Hearts, you've got your big Hearts, you've got your community projects, you've got the fan base. We need something to glue that together. And when we're good and we're on the park, we're good. That's such a strong force. Do you know what I mean? And I think that Brora, and I was very fortunate and lucky enough to be asked to go talk about Hearts on loads of different various channels. And I kept trying to say the same thing, which was the anger that you seen towards Anne Budge and towards Robbie. It wasn't because we lost to Brora. It wasn't just that game. It was everything that had built up to that point. Do you know what I mean? It was frustration. And Anne and Robbie will probably both accept that they become the focal point of that, because they are the manager and the owner. And like you said, I think when everybody calms down and everybody takes a step back, nobody will ever, in my opinion, there might be some folk out there that maybe, but nobody will ever not understand or appreciate the role that Anne Budge played in saving the football club. But I was very lucky to be at the Heart and Soul Day for the signing of the club and the shares transfer or whatever. And I deliberately trawled through the internet to find, I remember it, I'm 36, but I remember it vividly at the time, the statement from Chris Robinson to the shareholders saying, there is no life in this football club at Tynecastle. We will die if we stay here. We have to move.
That's the point I was alluding to earlier on, I mean, that anger in a way, it ties on the point you just made. It's born off an expectation for Hearts. That's why if you didn't have an expectation, you wouldn't get angry. And I think you're absolutely right as well to say we should not lower ourselves compared to the old firm. Having worked at Hamilton for 10 years, having done so many Celtic and Rangers games and worked with representatives of those clubs. In fact, the Rangers fan group gave me a right good kick. And what was it called? I was called a dictator ex-senior police officer. I wouldn't let them put their display on the day of a game. And in the Green Brigade, I had a number of run-ins too. But what you came across, this won't be new to you, but it really struck me hard working at Hampden, was we were just cannon fodder, as they regarded it. Celtic and Rangers regard the rest of the league as cannon fodder. And they can't get their head around it if you actually beat them. They cannot get their head around it. It makes it doubly enjoyable. But it shouldn't be a remote thing that we enjoy from time to time. And I think you're absolutely right about they've got to channel their anger somewhere. I was a bit unhappy, and I do mean this, I was a bit unhappy at some people using the foundation membership or stopping it as a weapon. They got weaponised it.
Yeah.
Is that really what you're meant to do when everyone says it's in my heart, that's it, forever, I'll die a Jambo, and yet I'm not giving you £20 a month, by the way, because you got beat last week. And it's not as simple as that. I'm not dismissing the level of anger, the level of despair. I don't think that's the way you achieve what you can achieve. But again, I suppose the point you're making, and the point I alluded to at the start, and I'm not totally clear in my mind what it'll look like. We have to have a better way of channeling those thoughts and comments and having some kind of meaningful result from it. I mean, saying, well, that's not quite what the foundation's here to do is right. And I mean, the foundation board have done tremendous work. Don't get me wrong, tremendous, all in their own time, they're not getting paid for it. But you can't just take a step back and go, guys, I'm sorry, but you're not quite understanding what the foundation does. That's true. But then the next step is, well, how can we be more responsive? How can we channel those thoughts and comments? And that's not easy. I mean, you've got 8,500 foundation members for a start. You then got the numerous other fans around that. It's going to be difficult to take on board and react in a meaningful way to all people's thoughts, because the spectrum is, as you well know, massive.
Yeah, it's wide. Yeah.
Where do you pitch yourself on that spectrum? But what we can do better, I have no doubt we can do better. And I think, I do feel if I got on the board, I could bring something in terms of that fervour, in terms of that passion to the table, and try and explore ways of being more responsive to that.
Yeah, and I think the success of the foundation has always been its ability to see through the noise, so to speak, right? So, yeah, you're right. We said on our podcast we were furious at Brora, and the performances that built up to Brora, that made me really, we were looking at, we're in this terrible league we shouldn't have been in, where we've got an aging squad, 30-year-old journeyman players that are struggling to beat part-time Arbroath. We don't have an identity, all that. And that culminates in the Brora Rangers game. The eruption of emotion comes out is the fact that you feel like your voice isn't getting heard and all that sort of stuff. But we were always the same, was you can be angry, absolutely, but you don't cancel your pledge on the back of that. Do you know that? That's not the reaction.
I don't believe you should do that. I don't.
No, and I agree that I think as well that I'll give most Hearts fans the benefit of the doubt too, is they might have done it as a reactionary thing, but then maybe in the light of day went, right, I'll put my pledge back in. But what I've always said would be and one has been one of the best things about the Foundation of Hearts, is that you can have to be able to take the anger away and say, right, well, you're going to get people that are just anti-Budge or anti-Robbie, that's fine. But in there somewhere is actually something where we've got a gap in the market, an opportunity to get better. If the fans feel they're not being listened to and that their reaction to be heard is to cancel their pledge, then as a foundation member, we need to do something, because we need to fix that, because that can't be the reaction every time we lose. Do you know what I mean?
That's absolutely my view. And of course, you mentioned earlier at the start of our chat about how well Hearts are doing. They are doing phenomenally well, and I'm absolutely delighted. Of course I am, as a Jambo. But the testing times are not when we're doing well. The testing times are when we're not doing so well. And you know yourself, I've followed Hearts now for 58, 59 years. It's a massive roller coaster. That actual roller coaster is actually almost part of the fun. It doesn't look that way when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, when you're there.
But it's not going to be a Celtic or Rangers, but their roller coaster kind of goes like that. Ours goes, and they got upset. Look, they tear the ground down when they lose a couple of games, So we have to take that on board. It's great that, expectations have been raised. I can't believe how quickly Robbie has churned out or turned out such a good team, such a well-balanced, effective team. Because the big problem we had before, for me, and I'm sure you would agree, is we couldn't break down defences. He came at us, great, we scored for fun. Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, we scored. If you put the no idea how we can get behind it. We huffed and puffed and squared the ball across the pitch back and forth. We're getting nowhere fast. He's found a team that seems to, I know it's all about pace, it's all about being direct, but he's found a way so far. And to be fair, teams haven't been too defensive against us in the main, but when they are, we seem to have found a way of largely being able to break them down. Whether it be string of draws, obviously. We should have won at least 2 of those 4 games.
Yeah.
So he's managed to take a squad and not add too many. He's really added a lot of quality to the squad very quickly, and we're playing such good football, you know.
Yeah, and I've always said as well, and it's been something that was always the mud that was thrown at the club during the Craig Levein era and stuff as well, is that people become too comfortable in their role. You know, Craig, did many different aspects of the football club, including being the manager and the director of football. And he'll probably even tell you now when he sits back, he did too much. He should have focused on one or whatever. But that was the circumstance that we found ourselves in. But see, having spent time, we're very lucky to talk to the CEO, and I've been very lucky to talk to Joe Savage, and both of them have the same outlook, which is top six isn't an achievement for our club.
No.
We should be setting our sights higher, and I think that's really helped Robbie, like having not pressure as in someone over his shoulder saying you lose tomorrow, you're gone, but knowing that, I felt under the Craig Levein thing that nothing could happen that he was going to get sacked or that he was going to be removed from his position, and I don't think that got the best out of him. I don't think that got the best out of the players or the clubs. When you're looking, I think, we went through that spat of ridiculous injuries and the luck with the injuries, and that almost became, didn't matter what happened, post-match, pre-match, we're hampered with injuries. So whatever happened in the 90 minutes, we just put it to one side as, when we've no got those injuries, we'll be fine. And it culminated in us not being fine and us finding ourselves in a stupid position come the demotion and at the season end and stuff. And I think that Robbie's really, really sort of striving and thriving under that bit of pressure that's on him right now.
I think you're right. Although I do think though as well, there's a great truth in injuries thing, whether I like it or not. And over the years, come January, February, the likes, the Hearts and the Aberdeens of this world struggle against the Old Firm when the injuries start kicking in and the suspensions start kicking in. Their squad is usually bigger, there's usually more quality in it, and maybe Hearts this year are a bit more quality around the squad. You need a quality squad because you will get hit with that. And time and again, that buys Rangers and Celtic the league because they have that resilience that other clubs just cannot match, and it is really challenging. And in Craig Levein, I know Craig quite well. I worked when I was a police commander at Tynecastle quite a bit. Craig's first stint at Tynecastle, I got to know him reasonably well. In fact, when I got my bit of the pitch, it was Craig who gave me the certificate. This is a bit weird. Craig goes, "Yeah, how you doing?" And of course, when I went to Hampden at first, I went there in 2010. He was the Scottish manager, and I used to sit very occasionally have a coffee with Craig. But Craig knew nothing about nothing. He's very guarded. Even someone who was on the staff there. Whereas Gordon Strachan, funnily enough, Gordon Strachan was in the BBs with Gordon Strachan, the same football team as Gordon Strachan. He remembered me, and my cousins. Him and I had a great relationship on a personal level. He's a thrown little bugger, but he's really he's good fun. He's a really caring wee guy. Behind that persona he puts up is a real caring wee soul there. And a few things I can tell you, some of the things he did behind the scenes. What to him, Gordon? And you mentioned CEO Andrew McKinlay. Andrew McKinlay I worked with at Hampden as well. He was in the Scottish FA. And a good thing with Andrew, I suppose, is that a number of good things about Andrew. He's a very, very astute individual, a very decent man, very good at organisation. He doesn't have the Hearts baggage that perhaps others. He hasn't been burnt like all of us have been burnt into the Hearts. So he comes in saying, why shouldn't we win the league? Why shouldn't we win? I mean, Bury St Johnstone won the Scottish Cup and the League Cup last year.
Yep.
How can we not do something like that? The League Cup really annoys me. And we've done a thing we shouldn't have done as Hearts fans. And I've contributed to this by calling it a Diddy Cup. Effectively ruling it out as having any value. That wasn't the wisest idea we've ever had, frankly, when there's only 3 trophies up for grabs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, there are good people. The club is definitely on the up. Testing times will come when we start, maybe the results don't go away for a few weeks and we'll have to kind of ride that storm and come through it. But I'm very excited by that. And I suppose the other point, and we talked about it earlier on, is I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like now that the foundation are the major shareholders. That means if we take something to the AGM, the club AGM, and we want something to happen, the board's kind of got to take that on board. That's new. That's a new thing. They've always listened to us as a foundation. We've got 2 members on the main board, but now we're the major shareholder. So now you don't want to do crazy stuff, but that gives a bit more power to your elbow. And I've got to be honest with you, until I was sitting on the foundation board, I wouldn't like to say how you'd use that power, but it must give you a bit more clout than perhaps we had before.
And well, it's a good point to go to where I was going to say next when we're talking about the Foundation of Hearts. Is I felt that Graham Robertson that we spoke to just before we spoke
Yeah,
to yourself, another candidate's a great guy as well,
it
was
was a good
saying
guy.
that there were, he talked about it in sort of phases. Phase one was the establishment of the foundation and setting up the pledgers and giving us a platform, and then sort of we've now achieved what would be classed as phase two with the shares handover and all that sort of stuff. And now we're into what would be phase three, which is where do we go? Like,
Yeah,
we've had this burning fire beneath us to say we've got to save the football club. You've just highlighted it at the start. This week we've just announced during COVID in the Diddy League. I'll say it. There we go. And we've still managed to come out £2 million in the black when one of the biggest clubs in their country has posted £23 million loss. The other biggest club in the country's posted a loss. We're on the front foot and we're established. And it's now for me, when I'm looking at the Foundation of Hearts and Hearts in general, I'm thinking that we've always had the elephant in the room, which has been the administration period, and that we almost lost the club. And that was what the glue that bound us all together to say,
yes,
but it's also been the antidote to some poor stuff that we've seen on the park, where we always kind of revert back to, yeah, but we almost went bust, or do you know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
now we're in a situation that we haven't had, and I'll touch wood, for a long, long time, where we're financially stable. We have good people at the football club that understand the fans, but also football business. When was the last time Hearts had the football business that we have right now? Take away what's on the park, the main stand, the hospitality, the revenues, the benefactors. We've never had that as a football club for a long, long time. So where do we go? How do you see the foundation driving forward? What would be the main
yeah. I mean,
aspect to that?
that's right. I mean, it's really really exciting. It's there are opportunities we've never had with the organisation. The infrastructure is now very very well in place. Um, I I think having been a major shareholder, as I say, it means that we can if we get the communication better with the foundation members for a start, 8,700 of them, and we capture what areas they want to move forward in with the club, we're far more able to bring that to the table with the main board and actually achieve whatever that is. We have to reflect what it is. I think we have to. I know I've seen it in all the applications, and it sounds like I'm just saying this because everyone's saying this, but the community aspects of it are so important as well. And I mentioned we don't want to use the term for it just now, but we're trying to develop. And I'm heading up a wee group within the foundation, the development of the Haymarket Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll develop stuff on the plaza, and we'll try and do stuff in between. So we'll try and have historical aspects to do with Hearts. We'll reflect in McRae's Battalion. I mean, something I haven't talked about so far, and I know it gets talked about a lot, but there's a internationally known group, loved the world over. We can utilise that, in a way that transcends football. I'm very keen in some ways to maybe move away from. I mean, I'm a card carrying Jambos next to the next person, but if we can just transcend that a little bit and become this real historical organisation within Edinburgh and talk about that, the march from Haymarket over the years from 1874 up to the present day, and then of course when you get to Tynecastle, we start developing projects, developing approaches that could tie in to the history. That I did the information centre on the High Street for the police, the little museum. I designed that, so I'm quite taken by. You can make quite telling contributions to the history of an organisation, to its image, by just doing little things really. And I think we can do things like enhancing the street signs on the way from Haymarket to Castle and Maroon and Hearts and Alteration, that kind of stuff. Now that's it's not huge, but it's a nice starting point. I think to say, here's where we've been. The thing you just said, here's where we've been, going right back to the very start, not just the Chris Robinson era, to the current day. Look how we're positioned. You, the fans, you, the foundation people who pay your money, and you've got a voice. Of course, you've got a voice. What do you want us to take as a board to the main board, and what kind of changes do you want to see getting made? And I think part of that is working more closely with local education, community groups, retailers, and getting the Hearts image and the Hearts standing enhanced. the pitch will look after itself. If we get success breeds success, we'll hold on to the players if we keep getting results. But I think it's time to really Hearts have a strong footprint in the Gorgie Dalry area. Let's really enhance that and take that forward a little bit. So I suppose the historian in me is intrigued and excited by that. It's something I'd really want to. I'm doing a little bit of that as a part of the marketing team. I could really enhance and take a lot of thoughts forward in the main foundation board, or certainly proposals forward about how we work better with local groups, how we have them use Tynecastle more than they perhaps they do, how they make use of the plaza on occasions, using our footprint to help their organisations is something we probably. I know the Big Hearts do fantastic work. I don't want to step on their toes, but there's room for taking a wee step back and just looking at how we can do things on a bigger scale than perhaps we've done so far. Yeah,
and I think you're right. I think we also have, and one of the only positives that can come out of COVID is that community has felt what it's like not to have Hearts in the centre of it, and it's we said on our podcast when things started to open, it sounds mental, but if you are going to go for a drink, you're going to go for a meal, or one of these clubs that were charging us silly money to watch one of their streams or whatever, go to Gorgie. Go spend your money in Gorgie, because that, as much as the club needs it, it's everybody in and around. It's the cafes, it's the bakers, it's the pubs, it's everything. They're suffering the most because we're not there. Every second Saturday, 18,000 people, 18,000 customers walk through that part of the city. And again, I agree with what you've said. Edinburgh is the capital of Scotland. We all know that. But Hearts and Hibs make a huge impact in Edinburgh. It's the clubs for their people, you know what I mean? And I think that it's something that the historical side, but also just Edinburgh itself, could embrace more. Football always seems to be that kind of sort of silent uncle, and they put him in a corner, just that you'll be fine type thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, we should celebrate it. We should absolutely celebrate it.
It's a very point I'm making, and I think as well, working with the council, I've worked with the council in a number of areas over the years. The historical aspects will really be attractive to them, and they're not so. They're always being nervous about the football club. They want to make sure the Hearts are treated the same way as Hibs and so on. And I get that, but it's up to us to say we want to do this, and this. If Hibs want to do something similar, they of course they can do so. In fact, we'll help with that. We'll chat to them, because the Hearts and Hibs do talk. Of course they do, in various ways and in various levels. But we really want to do. We want to celebrate here. I went to McKay's Battalion. If you got a lunch on Sunday, I got there about 5 o'clock. About 5 o'clock, it was going well, shall we say? I'd been at another lunch before that. I'm involved with a different regiment. I was after my regiment at lunch, but we got up. Gary Halliday, myself, Alistair Bruce, and we spoke briefly about this Maroon Mile project. And when I did my bit, said, look, and I wasn't blowing smoke up their backside. I was saying, you guys are all about celebrating the McKay's Battalion. Of course you are. Well, what better way than us giving you this platform to do so? A physical platform. You can have links, QR codes. You can have posters and pictures and flags and banners and all the way up, to Tynecastle and back again. And they were really quite excited by that. I said, look, one thing I can't do at the moment is tell you what I'm looking for from you. But when we give you the shout, please give us your thoughts. And that's just the McKay's Battalion side. I see us doing something similar with the foundation side. The problem is managing expectation as well, though, Liam, isn't it? I mean, you have to be careful. If I was to get on the board, I'm saying all these things on the board, first they'll probably go, yeah, we've tried all that before, and I'll say, no, we've really got to redouble our efforts. But you can't meet everyone's desires and wishes. There'll be some crazy plans out there. I remember one of the foundation AGMs where this guy was going, we need far more folk on the main board. There's millions of us now and all that. We're paying all this money in. Well, no, two's enough, because no, two's not enough. And I remember Stuart Wallace said to this guy, look, we can't have 8,500 committee members. You have to elect us and trust us that will reflect your views. If we don't reflect your views, then boot us out at the appropriate time. And it's probably quite a telling comment at this moment in time when there's 5 years going for 3 places with one incumbent. So there is that process, but I think you alluded to earlier on, and you're absolutely right. It's politicians say that, don't they? But every 5 years isn't really enough, is it, to put your view across? So there has to be a far quicker, more responsive way of capturing thoughts and ideas and suggestions and try to get them put into place than perhaps there are just now. Now, I'm saying that from a position of ignorance in terms of the board, because I work in a subgroup foundation board, and I guarantee you, Stuart Wallace, when he hears us, will go, yeah, Brian, we've done that, we've set up this and that, and we've tried to capture that. I suppose the point I'm making is, with the greatest respect, there is still a feeling that perhaps it's not as responsive as it could be, and being the major shareholder brings with it an even greater responsibility. And we have to, really look at that again, in my view. And as I say, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're going to change the world if I get on the foundation board, but I do have thoughts, and I do understand what they do. I do know all the people on the board, and I've worked with them through the marketing board a bit, and they're tremendously able people who've done a lot of good work. But the times are changing, and we just need to make sure that we adjust how that board operates and works with the main board going forward.
Yeah, and I think you make a valid point there as well. And I know we've been lucky enough to have a good relationship with Stuart. He's been on the podcast. He helped obviously arrange this. He understands the opportunity between being able to talk to the fans directly and all that sort of stuff. So we appreciate that. But like you said, they're one of the things that I like the most about the Foundation of Hearts is you might have walked in a path for an idea that ended up as a dead end at that moment in time. That doesn't mean you block up the path and you never walk down that road again, because things change. It might not have been right at the time. We've had all these crisis points or sort of objectives that had to be overcome first. But now it feels like, I've said before, it feels like that sort of fork in the road moment where we now can be heads up and proactive as a football club. We've got over all the hurdles that everybody told us we would never get to this point. Chris Robinson told us we would never have a stand and we'd have to think. The press told us the Foundation of Hearts would never kick off. We'd never be this, that, and that. Well, we're here, and we're turning.
Fantastic.
We're turning in profits.
And everyone, I totally agree with everyone feeds into everything else. So a good, effective management team for the club and for the team itself, a good team on the pitch, financially being more robust. I mean, that makes a huge difference. We've got a bit of money to be able to say, let's do that. Where perhaps in the past you might have gone, the point you alluded to earlier on, we almost died. Can we do this? No, that'll cost some money. We almost died, we've no money to spend on that project or this project. Now, we do have money to spend on projects. We do have money to invest in different areas, and we're seeing that. So take advantage of that. It's, in the past, it was enough. Staying at Tynecastle was massive, but we've got, that's in the past. We've done that. It's been brilliant, and we should always celebrate it and pat ourselves on the back. But that's done, and we've got to look forward now, and we're looking forward to a far better structure in terms of the players, the structure of the club, and the financial abilities that are out there. We have to seize that opportunity and start investing that.
I agree. So we're obviously where we are now. They said we get almost 9,000 pledgers. We've got 13,500 season ticket holders. Everything's rosy, but in terms of like grassroots level and the next, obviously this generation of Hearts fans will always have that time in the road where we were at St Mirren. We understood this is the last time we're ever going to be at Tynecastle. Yeah. We had that moment. That was our call to arms, and we've been fighting that fight since then. The next generation coming through, how do we make sure that they have the same fight, the same desire to get behind the foundation, to pledge, to safeguard the club's future?
So good point. It's something I was thinking about the other day as well, and chatting to someone about all this stuff, because we had a real belief in the foundation. I say I'm not on the board, but even working in the wee subgroup, that when we ticked off Hearts saved, Hearts not moving, there was a real belief that a lot of pledgers would stop pledging because job done. And I know it was something that really engaged the board at that point. Now, it hasn't, apart from the protest vote we talked about earlier on, it hasn't happened. In fact, it's increased. And again, it's this one thing feeding into another. You keep doing well, and then the pledgers seem to want to keep putting their money in. Even the thing like the financial announcement this week, look what we've achieved financially, because largely or partly because of what the foundation members are putting. So you're right, you have to have tangible results for that investment. I mean, winning trophies would be helpful as well, because you could say, look, your money has largely contributed to Hearts getting back to being one of the top forces in Scotland, and we're now winning trophies again. If you don't keep giving us that money, we won't have the financial acumen to get the players to achieve those kind of results. There's a direct line between your contribution right through to what's on the pitch. You make that connection quite clearly. But you also, as you mentioned before, you've got the infrastructure at Tynecastle, you've got the bars. I mean, the restaurant, if you've eaten there, it's a fantastic restaurant. That infrastructure brings in money. So your investments have allowed Hearts to build decent bars and restaurants. That brings in money that not just from the fans, it's the restaurants, one of the best restaurants in Edinburgh, brings in money. Again, that money filters its way down through to the management and the players. So there's a whole line of examples of where that money goes to that you can point back and say, please keep giving it and more, because that gives you the stadium you've got, fantastic looking stadium, the players you've got that are achieving results. And I suppose the third arm for me would be, as I talked about before, and it's letting us invest in we'd have to find the example, but some of the community stuff that we've been involved in, working with the local communities, giving us money to engage with them, to let us develop historical stuff. That needs a bit of money. For instance, doing up Haymarket will take money. The memorial, doing up the plaza and putting some structure on the plaza, and I won't say what that might be because it's not been agreed yet, but some kind of plaza structure which will give us a kind of two ends of the bookshelf. That takes an investment, but there'll be a practical, visible result from your investment. So there's a whole series of things we can say, this is what your money can do for us. And you're right, we shouldn't probably anymore say it's keeping us alive. That's done. It's true, but it's done. We're past that point. So there'll be an appetite, rightly so, from kids in particular who didn't know the bad times, to say, well, I'm happy to give you £10 a month. What do I see for that? Well, we can actually outline tangible stuff from that, and maybe some of the project stuff that we can invest in and see what that throws up.
But you're right, and like you said, the kids right now potentially can't pledge or whatever, but because we have the community programs like your Big Hearts, your coaching days and stuff, we're getting to those people straight away, and they'll remember that Hearts, helped with this or helped with that and had the opportunity to play at Tynecastle, and that's like where you're then sort of nourishing your next wave of pledgers, your next Hearts fans coming through the project, which is why rightly Big Hearts have been honoured with winning the prize that they won a couple of weeks ago, because the work that we do, we were very lucky that we started the podcast because we were bored of doing lockdown quizzes with our family. So we wanted to talk to our pals. So we started doing a Hearts quiz and having a drink on Zoom. And then we're like, this is actually quite good. We could record it and see if anybody would want to listen. And from that tiny little platform, people started to message us to be like, this is really helping me get through lockdown. This is really, and with the club, with other podcasts, with Craig and the guys at Big Hearts, we managed to bring and pull together the Talk of the Toon calls we did on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And basically it was like this. We just got 10 to 20 Jambos on a Zoom call and we just chewed the fat about Hearts. And it's so innocuous. It's such a tiny little thing, but it made such a big, massive difference. Do you know what I mean? And now that we've got the club back.
That's fantastic.
And like you said, now that we've got the club back and we're allowed to actually be inside the stadiums, it's no surprise that we're selling at home games, we're selling at away games, because, again, we've had the club taken away from us, so to speak, during COVID. We weren't allowed to go watch us. And Hearts fans, there is not another group of fans in the UK that backs their club as much as the Hearts fans.
I was just going to say that. I mean, every club thinks, and I've worked with a lot of clubs, worked at Hampden, I've used to go down to Newcastle a lot. A friend of mine did my job at Newcastle, and I went to a lot of games down there. Every club thinks their fans are the best in the world. But the Hearts fans have good claim to be up there because they are absolutely phenomenal. I've seen other clubs' fans, some clubs not so far away from where Hearts are based, don't do what we do, are not as passionate, are not as committed. Not all clubs are quite in the same standing. Hearts fans are incredibly loyal. I know we talked about some people not being happy before about some results. That's natural, but still the vast bulk are. And it comes to a point, I was thinking, it comes back to what you were saying earlier on for me. It's really important that Hearts are talked about in Edinburgh in the same way as Celtic, Rangers, any other club, because there are still tragically, every Saturday buses go through the west from Edinburgh. There's no sadder sight to see buses. I'd rather went and supported, should I say support Hibs over? Yeah, I will say that. I'd rather supported Hibs than getting a bus and go through to Ibrox and Parkhead. What's that all about? If we could, we've got a huge catchment. The city of 500,000 people, massive catchment area, and what we've got already is tremendous. But there's a far more untapped resource out there that we could be getting in and about, and we can only do that by all the things we've talked about over the last wee while. Is doing well on the pitch, enhancing the structure of the club, enhancing what being a Hearts supporter and coming on to Tynecastle does for you. The resource is there, but it's got to tap into it and bring them along. And once you're hooked, you can't support another team. If I ask you to stop supporting Hearts next week and follow another team, the first thing you do is look at Hearts' result on the telly on a Saturday afternoon. You couldn't stop yourself, you know.
As much as if we get beat 3-0 tomorrow, I wish I could turn it off. I wish I could just go, I'm never doing it again. But you can't help it. It's a drug, isn't it?
It's in our blood. It's a drug. Well, it is a drug, and because of that, we've got to capitalise on that, because, you know, a lot of fans don't need much more than just being able to go along and see their team and enjoy the odd success. But I think I know we should be aspiring to more than that. We're bigger than that.
Yeah, and that's my thing. And I think Hearts, on the whole, from COVID, have actually treated the sort of coming out of COVID very well. When I look at some of the pricing structures of other clubs that are charging the ticket prices, they're charging their own fans to go to games. Yeah. That was my worry. When we were sitting in the house and we couldn't go to the games, I was sitting thinking to myself, Hearts have sort of there's two strategies that could be at play here. As you think, right, I have a core of 8,000 to 10,000 fans that will pay whatever and come regardless, because that's what we do. So if we charge all of them an extra tenner, we'll make this amount of money. Or the other one was, which I hoped we would go for, which is, well, actually, we've got 250,000 fans in Edinburgh that have been sat on their arse on a Saturday with nothing today that are going to want to come out. So let's meet in the middle and get your core fan base back to Tynecastle. But let's get the people that have maybe treated it as you've all done it yourself. Before COVID, sometimes somebody would say, "Do you want to go to the game?" I'd go, "It's raining," or "No, I'm going to stay in the house." But now that it's been taken away, I'll never miss it. I'll never miss it again, because I know what it's like.
Yeah, I think let's moving away from just the football matches themselves. I mean, you talk about the heart and soul days and tremendous appetite to come on to these days in Tynecastle. The kids, I mean, it's hard to remember. I mean, you're a lot closer to than I am. I'm 63 now, but the excitement, your heart raising a beat when you go into Tynecastle and just see the place. You know, bringing kids into that. Once you brought them into the structure of the place, the Heart and Soul Day or a Hearts Day or other days of foundations do, or getting their certificates and so on, which I'm going along on Sunday to the pot ceremony. I'll probably do the certificate stuff. The kids' faces they're beaming. I think as you get older, you suppress that a bit, don't you? You get hurt a bit and you suppress it. Kids don't suppress it. They absolutely, their heart's on their sleeve and on their chest, and they absolutely love the whole thing, the whole club. We've got to capture that and make sure that we give them things that maintain that and they can thrive on that, you know?
Yeah, and I think one of my things that I'll be looking for from Hearts is the further redevelopment of Tynecastle. What I mean by that, I'm not saying build a stadium or whatever, but I think inside the stadium we can make it more friendly for fans, because again, it's if we make the experience or the match day welcoming for everybody, not just your sort of working class man, but for everybody, then there'll be pledgers on the back of that. There'll be more money on the back of that. You know, if we can, let's get Explore Safe standing. If there's an appetite for it, let's have a look at that. Can we get better turnstiles? We've all waited. We've all been in the COVID turnstile. I parked at Sainsbury's, went to BMC, walked all the way around and had to walk back to my car to join the queue at Sainsbury's again. But do you know what I mean? I think that's where the Foundation of Hearts have got an opportunity when they've got their voice to really sort of score a couple of easy tap-ins straight away.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, because I mean, already they are the kind of fans' voice on the board, but that can be taken another step forward, in my view. Of course it can, definitely can. So you talk about turnstiles. I remember at a concert at Hampden, a lady got stuck in a large lady got absolutely enmeshed in a turnstile. I mean, and she got halfway in and couldn't get back out again. We had to get the fire service to come and cut her out of the turnstile, and she started to panic as you would.
Oh, of course.
And so you've got medics giving her an IV to keep her calm, and they had to cut the turnstile from around her. Meanwhile, of course, that's another big queue outside. That's to add to other queues and so on. Some mad concerts brought. Football was bad enough at Hampden, and some concerts brought some mad things along. You know, folk would rush the stage at the start and not move from there the whole
day.
Just wet themselves where they stood, just because they weren't going to leave that stage. You know.
I always remember that, because we talked about the main stand under Chris Robinson. I always remember going to the old turnstiles at the main stand, but anybody that was bigger than 16 stone had to chap the door so the guy could open the thing. And I thought to myself, I'm never getting to that size. I didn't ever want to have to chap the door to be like, can I get in, please?
That's a good point, actually. I try to keep away from that kind of size, but it's quite a common thing now. The thing is, you open the doors and folk can sometimes 30 folk rush past them. You know.
I know it's a hard.
It has to be done, and they're not really built. Concerts are always a strange thing at a football stadium. That's another thing. Hearts have got to be applauded for having some interesting stuff on the pitch. I went to a couple of the concerts, and it works really well at Tiny. It's a great venue. The atmospherics are good. I'm sure that something the club are looking to do in the future, as long as it doesn't damage the pitch. Because
I was going to say, let's not start that debate. Let's not start that debate again.
Done properly, I know it happened before, but it's not all about making money. But then again, you're bringing people into that stadium that would never set foot in Tynecastle normally. What greater way of doing it? It ties in with your point about having a product that transcends just what's on the pitch. Concerts and shows and exhibitions on the pitch.
Look at the Warri two halves, the thing that they did during the Fringe and all that sort of stuff. They were unbelievable. It wasn't just Hearts fans that were going to those things as well, which is good. So obviously we've talked there at length, but what's your thoughts as a Jambo in the start of the season? How have you been impressed?
Well, we're talking earlier on. I suppose it's always, you're always nervous as a Jambo. I'm really, really impressed with the squad. Very impressed with the results we've got. I mean, looking Craig Gordon from the back forward. Craig Gordon, what a machine! I know Craig a little bit. He's a lovely guy. You might have met him yourself. Lovely, modest, big guy. What a goalkeeper! He's playing better than he's ever played, and that instills a confidence in the defence. And then we're taking it forward from there. Probably a wee bit light up front, but what team isn't light up front? You know. But they've played so well, and I've been really pleased with the way they've kept their shape. I do think we talked about this earlier on. That's again the negative side. We get a few injuries, we get a few suspensions. That the challenge will be stronger, and that's usually about January, February, March, isn't it? But I do also think, look at the bench. The bench is impressive.
I've said
and
that.
I think we should be okay. So I'm really enjoying going to the games. I like the fact that we're playing a bit of fast-paced attacking football. We're not just playing tippy-tappy across the middle of the pitch. We did a bit too much of that last season for my liking. I know all the fans share that view. And I suppose Robbie was biding his time, preparing, thinking of what kind of team he wanted to put out on the pitch, and he's now achieving that. Clearly, they can be enhanced even more. Of course it can. But things are looking really good on the pitch,
The thing I like the most about this Hearts team, and again, it goes back to maybe you see things differently when things are better than they were now. But I look at Benny, Devlin, Cochrane, Suter, Craig Gordon, Boyce. They all look like they're absolutely loving it. They're playing with a smile on their face. They're confident. They look like they love not just playing, but to be there. They've got a team bond and stuff. And I think back to, your Malin Martins, David Vanacek's, your like guys that they were here because they got asked to come here. Do you know what I mean? They didn't have that sort of. It looked like a bit of a chore to play for.
Vanacek there was something about him. I liked him. There was flashes, something really interesting with that guy. And we never got anything like the best out of him. It's the unit for me. I think 86. I don't like top 86 in some ways, as we know, but that was a good team, a good squad. The team under Romanov that we knew couldn't afford and was going to be one season or two seasons with him. What a team that was! Probably the best squad of players I've ever seen playing for Hearts in all the years of forward Hearts. But I say the 98 Scottish Cup winning team is a very, very strong squad as well. This, and let's be bold about it. You mentioned this earlier on. We tend to talk ourselves down. This squad, if we can keep the majority of, we can add a couple, is compares very, very well to what we've had in the past. We should have no bones about that.
Yeah, I absolutely echo it. I think we've overcome loads of hurdles this year, and again we seem to be just cutting the season into wee manageable sections, and we're coming into another phase where where we've got Motherwell tomorrow, and then we have St Mirren. If we manage them thing, there's a point by come full time the end of St Mirren, we could be top of the league because of the way Celtic and Rangers are playing in Europe and stuff. So they're the things that I've been impressed with the most, is we've managed to we've touch wood, we've been pretty good at breaking some of our historic ducts, so to speak.
I think so. I agree. Totally.
Well, Brian, again, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed the chat.
It's been amazing, and all the best with the votes and stuff that come.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much.
Good morning.